commencé à apprendre le français, j'étais très timide, j'avais pas envie de parler à personne. Mais les choses ont commencé à changer et j'ai commencé à parler avec plus de confiance grâce à deux choses. On va pas faire comme si j'étais une experte, je ne suis pas du tout ok. Mon accent français est pas parfait aujourd'hui, mais il est bien meilleur qu'avant. Je veux donc partager deux techniques pratiques et changements de mentalité qui m'ont aidé à améliorer mon accent français et que je continue à pratiquer aujourd'hui. On y va. Alright, so let's start with the basics. When it comes to sounding more like a native in French, I like to think that there's two simultaneous actors going on. We have your accent and then we have your pronunciation. Now, while this is probably not the official Merriam-Webster definition, the way it makes sense in my head is that pronunciation is how you produce the actual sounds of a language. Individual letters, syllables, and words with a focus on saying them correctly, while the accent is the flavor that you give those correctly pronounced words. Rhythm, flow, intonation, emphasis on certain parts of the word, etc. So accent, pronunciation. And it's very important to get that second one right. You can have a non-native accent or a different accent and still be perfectly clear and understandable. But if your pronunciation is off, you're likely to be misunderstood, especially in a language that has so many similar sounds.
Un verre, vers un verre, vers un verrier, vers 20
So you're going to want to focus on vowels, especially when they're found in different parts of the word, as well as those tricky combinations that give us all problems. A lot of our native languages just don't have such nuanced sounds, but learning the difference between them is 100% doable. Of course, I cannot leave you all without some resources. Obviously, there's thousands of resources all over the internet on French pronunciation, but the one I'm going to leave you with is Learn French with Alexa on YouTube. This is an absolutely amazing resource to improve your French pronunciation because she has a whole playlist dedicated to pronunciation in French, which literally covers every single French sound you could think of in great detail in a way that makes sense and is practical right then and there in the moment without the videos being hours long. And I'm not saying you have to watch all the videos, but it's super helpful just to watch the videos on the sounds you have problems with, like vowels or the letter R, so I've linked her channel in the description. Now with these resources, there's a lot of methods to get this pronunciation down. Repetition is key, so drilling each sound until it's as correct as possible is going to be a good idea. And to aid with that, I recommend focusing on mouth mechanics. Looking into the actual mouth shapes and movements that produce these sounds is very helpful in my opinion.
Pencil, which is le crayon, mouth, bite, and you say
The main thing is to be conscious of these patterns though, right? Recognizing that vous and vu are pronounced differently, even if you can't hear it the first couple times. Ou, vous, vu. With all that being said, pronunciation is important, but things really leveled up when I got to the next technique. Once your pronunciation is solid, the game changer for me when it came to trying to get the rhythm and the flow and just the vibe, you know, of a native speaker was shadowing. If you haven't heard of shadowing is basically when you listen to native speech and then immediately repeat it out loud, right? We're trying to match the tone, rhythm, and speed as closely as possible. This trains your mouth and your muscle memory and is honestly what has made the biggest difference for my accent, me personally.
À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmier.
À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmier.
Infirmière.
Infirmière.
À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmière.
À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmière. Now, if you're wondering what platform I'm using lately to practice shadowing, it's called Lingopie, and they're actually the sponsors of today's video, which I'm super excited about. Lingopie is the platform if you want real engaging material to shadow. TV shows, movies, reality TV, all in your target language. And it's not just about passive watching either. They have so many tools that turn every episode into a full language learning lesson. To highlight just a few of Lingopie's features, you get interactive subtitles where you can click on any word for an instant translation, built-in flashcards to practice vocabulary, and playback controls to slow things down if you need it.
Je suis arrivée dans le service de réanimation.
Let me slow that down.
Je suis arrivée dans le service de
Just a few seconds ago, you saw me using Lingopie's loop feature, which is great if you want to replay a challenging sentence or phrase until you get its pronunciation right while you're shadowing.
À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmière. À l'hôpital, ça a toujours été infirmière.
I'm also thoroughly impressed with their AI pronunciation checker, which analyzes your speech and gives you real-time feedback on your accent and pronunciation. If you want to make shadowing fun and binge-worthy, definitely check out Lingopie. I've put a link in the description where you can start a free trial and get 55% off of a yearly subscription. So some ground rules, things to keep in mind when you're shadowing. First, choose a person who you want to speak like, that has an accent and a way of speaking that you would like to have. All right, so you want to take into consideration their age, their nationality, maybe their social class. So for example, if you're, you know, a middle-aged professional, maybe you're learning French for the business world, you might not want to shadow, say, a Gen Z easy streamer because you might end up picking up a way of speaking that you didn't intend to. Like I mentioned, when you're shadowing, you want to try and match the person that's speaking as closely as possible. Not just their way of pronouncing words, but their intonation, their rhythm, their filler words, even when they breathe. I recommend picking out short sentences and breaking down long sentences into shorter ones and repeating and repeating and repeating and repeating. Another small tip, if you're not doing it already, make sure you're speaking to native speakers in French. I know it's not accessible for everybody, but for some of y'all, it is, and you're just shy. So get it together. My ability to copy the people that I talk to is my greatest strength when it comes to learning languages. Growing up in the US, but in a home where there's Nigerian accents, but then going to a predominantly white school, but then after that going to a predominantly black school, we're gonna just say that I learned how to imitate accents very quickly. And this has benefited me a lot in my language learning journey, especially when it comes to sounding more native in a language. And anyone can do it actually, even if you think you can. I think a lot of times we underestimate what the black box of our brain can do subconsciously if we just give it enough input. That's how people naturally form their accents in their first language, based on the people they surround themselves by. So do make an effort to talk to more native speakers, or if that's not accessible for you, make sure to ramp up the amount of content that you consume in French. It has the same effect. So hopefully now you have some tools in your belt to sound more native in French. But before we end this video, I want to tell you a secret. Okay? You don't need to sound perfect to be respected. Like, you don't need to sound French or Canadian or like a native speaker to be respected. Looking back, I was just very scared, I guess, that people would judge my accent, but in my experience, y'all, people do not care. They don't care. And if they did notice that I had an accent, it actually invoked curiosity about where I was from and how I knew how to speak French. And I realized that I'm actually the same way. If I meet somebody and they speak English with an accent or in a different way than I do, then I'm actually curious about where is this person from? And if this person has learned English as a second language, that actually makes me respect them more. So yeah, having a native accent or rhythm or intonation, it's not the end all be all. The most important thing is that you're understood and that you speak with confidence. And for some people, that confidence will come with improving their accent and sounding more native. But for anyone, confidence can come with time, experience, practice, and repetition. So yeah, if this video helped you, be sure to give it a like and hit subscribe. I hope these tips helped you and that you'll go use them out on this French journey, man. It's not easy, but just remember, you got it.